Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm Andy. I'm the 60-Minute Gamer, and this is a channel about video games and about gaming-related content. And I had a blast at the Midwest Gaming Classic this last week. I got to go, and it is never a disappointment. You never know what you're going to find at the Midwest Gaming Classic. This year, even though it's not released yet, I found a huge game. This game was enormous, and it's for a system that isn't even released yet. Yes, I got my first Nintendo Switch 2 game at the Midwest Gaming Classic. And I'm going to reveal that right now. Yeah, last year and this year I had an opportunity of staying at a friend's house the night before the Midwest Gaming Classic and didn't leave to the hotel room till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we just made the most of it by playing video games. Last year we hit a lot of Nintendo Switch games that were two-player multiplayer. We finished playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, had a blast doing it. So this year we decided to do it again. I packed up the Nintendo Switch, a bunch of games, and I also threw Split Fiction in there for the Xbox Series X, and that's what we ended up playing. We put that sucker in and we had a blast playing this. And Split Fiction is the follow-up to It Takes Two and A Way Out, and it is a cooperative we're having a blast playing this. It's a cooperative game where you have to work together to solve puzzles to advance, and finish the game together. You can't do it single player. You can't do it by yourself. You have to do it with a friend. And you can see by the looks on our faces and just the laughter in the room that we are literally having a blast playing this. And I would say this is a game that's a must buy. If you got another gamer in the home or you got people that you game with online, this is a top-notch game, and you're going to have a blast playing it. And just what a way to start off the weekend of the Midwest Gaming Classic than to be playing games with an old buddy, sitting on the couch playing couch cooperative, and just yelling, screaming, and having a blast playing a newer game. I just got to mention that this game is only $49.99. It's $50, so all this hoopla going on right now about the Nintendo Switch 2 and Mario Kart World that you saw at the beginning of this video being $80, what a great value you get here for $50. And you can tell that we're having a blast playing this game, and I think you could have a blast playing this too for 50 flipping bucks.
Here we go again.
Excuse me, are you guys from Austin, Minnesota?
Say what?
Are you from Austin, Minnesota?
Bam.
Bam.
Yeah, haven't you ever heard of 60-Minute Gamer?
Yeah, I think I did. He's that nerdy guy, likes games.
Home of the celebrity.
Home of the celebrity.
Can I
Spam
get your
town.
autograph?
Can you bite me? And here's the calm before the storm. This is 2025 preview night for the Midwest Gaming Classic, and this is the calm before the storm. People will just start pouring in here in the next day or two. And thanks for clicking on the video. I appreciate you guys. If you've gotten this far, there's no reason not to hit that like button or subscribe. This is just going to be a video walking through certain areas of the Midwest Gaming Classic 2025, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And I'm going to talk to you as we're going through. And the first year I went to MGC, I just bought a regular weekend pass. I did not buy the VIG pass, and I did not go to the preview night, but I found out the next year that VIG ticket is very, very beneficial for me because you get a half an hour early entry to the vending floor on Saturday, but you also get to go to the preview night. And in the past, they've only, allowed 400 tickets to be sold for that preview night. This year they allowed 500, and they're going to do the same thing, from here on out. But there's limited amount of people per each machine, so by only having 500 people in there, you get to really get in there and play some of the pinball, some of the arcade machines, and you get a brief preview of what's yet to come and be able to do it in a less crowded area, and it is just wonderful. And in 2025, it was about $185 for the BIG ticket. Next year, I see they already got it posted that it's $190. But like I said, you get a lot of stuff for that value. And you don't have to go that route. You can actually just come the Saturday and Sunday. And Sunday is great because it is family day. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but there is a Midwest Gaming Classic podcast you can listen to. And it's also on YouTube in video format. And it's hosted by the panel director, Jason Garris from the Midwest Gaming Classic. And it is a great podcast. I enjoy watching this, and it gives a lot of information from time to time. I loved the interview with Gar Nelson from the Garcade. That was a flipping great podcast. And this year they ended up season 3 with having the co-owner Dan Lucen and the entertainment director Matt Isbell on the podcast, and they were just sharing what it takes to run a show and what we're going to look forward to seeing, at the 2025 event. And it was just a great podcast to listen to. So next year, look for season 4 of the Midwest Gaming Podcast on YouTube or whatever podcasting client you use. And one of the things that they shared was how important it was for pre-sale of tickets, especially early pre-sale of tickets, because they have to have a deposit in for the Baird Center, and the total amount that it costs to rent that facilities is in the six-figure amount. So when we buy our VIGs or we buy our tickets early, whether it be sweatshirts, t-shirts, or games, that all goes to helping make next year's event successful. And here's some footage of the after-party pinball tournaments that they had going on from 9:30 to 11:30, and they were pretty cool. I mean, you can see right there, they have like a frosted glass on top of the Jaws machine. How in the heck would you even see to do this? I mean, you had to have known the table and played Jaws a lot, or whatever table they choose to do that. And also going on at this time during the after party, you can actually head up to the second floor, and on the second floor they have an arcade that comes from Menominee Falls, and they bring a lot of arcade machines and pinball machines for free play. And you can head on up there, and they have a little after party going themselves where you can just enjoy some video games and arcade games right there in their room. Another favorite room is the guys' games and beer room. These guys do a great job just presenting just a little bit of everything in this, from arcade games to console games to live music. They got a guy shredding the guitar in there, different parts of the days, and it's just a fun room with some classic gaming. Here is their Steel Battalion setup that they have every year, and you can jump in here and play in a game with multiplayer all hooked up together, and it's like a little LAN party. And the Pac-Man BS setup this year was awesome. I love those neon lights they had up top there, and it's a game that you can play on the GameCube or on the Nintendo Switch. And they do a setup of just a sampling of everything that you can play, from computers to consoles to modern stuff to classic stuff to stuff that is really old, like this Odyssey, this Magnavox Odyssey right here. That is so cool to see. And a lot of people have heard of these systems but have never really played them, but you can actually sit down and give them a play. And here was a Nintendo Virtual Boy, and that's something that not everybody gets to see or even hear about, that are young gamers today. So they can come into this room and play anything from Pong to Magnavox Odyssey all the way up to, the Ouya. And there's just games that, people are going to enjoy playing. It's a brief walkthrough of like a little museum here, and you got this out on the game center floor, but it's just kind of neat having another room set aside and not as crowded as the game center where you can actually play those games. And here is the vendor hall on Sunday morning. I didn't capture any footage of the vendor hall on Saturday. It's just insane. In that first half hour, I'm really running out there trying to find some holy grails that I can find really quick before they let everybody in half an hour after the VIGs come in. And that's really beneficial for me because some of the big ticket items go really quick. And last year I wanted a Virtual Boy or a Vectrex for my big items, and I waited too long, and all the Virtual Boys that were selling on the floor were going quick. And by that last day, when I thought about picking one up, one vendor had raised his price, probably a couple $100 more, because he knew he had the last item on the floor. And it's, it's a supply and demand type of thing. When you got the last item, you can boost that up a little bit. And it's just one of those items that I can live without, because it's just going to be a flex item in my game room. And the other flex item that I wanted was a Vectrex. And the year before, I waited till the very last day to get my Vectrex as well. And there's one vendor that always has them, some games and the overlays, that he sells right there, along with some other stuff. And I saw the last one sitting on his table, walked down about 3 vending booths, and realized, I better just go back and get it. And as I walked back to get it, it just left with somebody else, and I didn't get that. So, if you snooze, you definitely lose. So you got to keep that in mind. But there is always next year. And just to say, that was the item I picked up first at this year's Midwest Gaming Classic. I did my fast walk to see where this vendor was at this year. He comes every year, and sure enough, he was there, and I went and bought one right away. So I walked home with the Vectrex that day. And my home away from home for the weekend is the Hilton City Center, which is right across the street from the Baird Center. It's connected to the Skywalk, so you literally can walk the Skywalk right to the convention center. And that makes it really handy when you load up your vending bag with a bunch of games and apparel and, knickknacks and whatever. And if you're carrying a Vectrex, that can get heavy at times, so it is really nice to be able to walk right across the Skywalk, take the elevator right up to your hotel room, and drop your stuff off so you can head back out to the vending floor and fill your bag up with more stuff that you want. And I really suggest that you make a wish list of things that you want. Compulsive buying can be a real bad problem in a place like this, especially for a gamer that's seeing stuff that they want that they haven't seen for years. So, in southern Minnesota, we don't have a whole lot of video game stores. So being in a place like this, you really need to set a budget for yourself and try to stay within that budget and be a good steward of your money. And Saturday, I walked by this table probably 3 or 4 times, and I could never hear this girl play her ocarina because it was so crowded. But today, I got the opportunity on Sunday to listen to her. And there's tons of games to purchase at the Midwest Gaming Classic. The vendor hall is just full of tables, but I am seeing an influx of different games that are going into the glass cabinets now. And for some odd reason, I love to pick up Atari 5200 games, and I really didn't see very many of those out there. There were all the ones that are really ultra commons, like the Pac-Mans, the Missile Commands, Defenders, just stuff that's been overdone over the years. And some of the ones that are more rare, I'm not finding them on the tables anymore. And I wasn't finding any 7800 games either. There was a few out there, but they were the most common ones. But I wasn't finding, the uncommon ones that I really want to, try out, on my 7800 or my 2600 plus. And there was a lot of games available for purchase out on the vendor floor. And in comparison to past years, it just felt like there wasn't as many game vendors as there has been in the past. There was more arts, more t-shirts, more 3D printed items. It was just a different feel to the vendor floor. It wasn't negative, but it just seemed like, there was a lot more hunting to be done to find the games that you were looking for. Yeah, leave some comments down below if you felt the same way, or if you actually completed a list of things that you were looking for and you actually found them there. I would be really interested to hear from you. So make those comments down below. I really appreciate it. And I think in the past years, I spent more time on the vendor floor looking for games. And I had a friend go with me, and I could see he really was biting at the bit to play, some video games. So we headed over to the game center to play some. But that being said, I still didn't find everything on my list. And I had two sets of eyes helping me look for games. And we just struck out on a lot of stuff we were looking for. So I went home with a lot of signage, a lot of 3D printed items. I had maybe a handful of games and my Vectrix. But my list is still there. I got 3 more conventions I'm going to this year. So hopefully I can continue looking for that list at these other 3 conventions. And, just keep in mind when you're buying this stuff that you're buying from somebody that's rented a space out, that they've actually taken the time to pack this stuff, collect this stuff, get it to the convention, set it up, in a presentable way. And you're not paying for, shipping for this stuff or packaging. You're buying this right from them right there. So kind of keep that in mind when you're haggling over prices, that these are people that are trying to earn a living as well. And keep in mind, when I say I'm not finding a whole lot on the vendor floor, that's coming from my perspective. I'm in my mid-50s. I've been collecting most of my life. So I got a lot of games that I've been collecting over the years. In the past 5 years of going to conventions, I've been picking up a lot of games. So when I see games that I already have, I'm not going to repurchase those. But the games that I'm looking for, I'm not typically finding here on the convention room floor this year. And a lot of things that I'm not seeing is, besides those Atari games, is a whole lot of GameCube games or Dreamcast games. I'm not seeing Dreamcast out there. And you used to see floating around, a few TurboGrafx here and there, and, maybe a Neo Geo. And those things are, they're hard to find out here. And I didn't see any modern games, really. I didn't see a whole lot of PS5 or Xbox Series X games on the floor. And I think that has to do with the game not being on the disc. People don't want to buy games that aren't on a disc, that are collectors. And there are a lot of collectors on the vending room floor. And I wish, the developers, would see this trend that people want physical games. Gary Kitchen, Dan Kitchen, and David Crane were on the vending room floor. And they were selling some games there as well from, their Audacity games. And I picked one up this year, and I can't wait to play that. And that's the one panel that I regret missing, because I would have loved to hear what those guys are going to say. But I guess that's what we got the Midwest Gaming Classic podcast for. So hopefully they will get that put up this next year or maybe the following year, and I will get to hear that panel in its entirety. This year I wanted to get some footage of the tabletop gaming area, because I usually don't do that. My interests are in, video games and pinball. And these guys really do it well in here. They've got some areas that you can get in and play games. You can check out a board game, or you can actually sit down and learn how to play a game from a game master. And this is actually on Sunday, when I did some filming on Sunday morning. So there wasn't a whole lot of activity going on here, but this room was crowded. I went down the escalator several times and peeked my head in this room, and it was just busy. There is a lot of tabletop gamers out there, and this is a place that you want to come during the Midwest Gaming Classic. And as you go around the room, there's different things. Like here's 2D Con. It is a Minneapolis St. Paul convention. It's coming up in August. And you have a library of board games right here. And you can stop in and see Erica right there, and she will help you check one out and get you a game that you want to play at a table, and they'll assign you a table right then and there. So you can just see they've got tons and tons of different board games available to check out and play. In years past, I've seen, Magic the Gathering games in some of the halls out in front of some of these, larger convention centers or, larger rooms. And this year they had a totally dedicated room for tabletop customizable card games. And they also had this big dragon back there, and it was new this year, and it is the Dragon Midwesticus. And it was huge. So Dankey Kang has a friend this year. And in the back area here, they hosted the speed cubing event that they had. And they had competitions of all different ages, going on in the back. And you could actually go back there and learn how to speed cube, and they would sit there and show you how to do it. And they kind of hosted their own little vending area back here, and they had card games, board games, and different things to purchase right there on their own vending room floor in their tabletop gaming area. And throughout the halls of the Midwest Gaming Classic and the Baird Center, they had different activities hooked up everywhere, whether it be vending machines, it'd be game machines, it would be VR in a hallway. You had to stop and look, because if you didn't look, you had the chance of missing out. Most of this stuff was free. There was some stuff they charged for, which was very rare for the Midwest Gaming Classic. But like this room to my right here, it's a special presentation. I thought maybe it was some LAN party or some discussion or something. It was actually a vendor room with like a LAN party and games in the back, and I didn't even go in there and look. I saw their YouTube channel that showed what they had in there, and I missed out in that room. And I'm going to go through the maker room here really quick. This is always cool. These are the makers, the guys that build these handhelds, and they do, kind of modding stuff. And it is a neat area to look through. That Xbox right there was flipping cool. It's a handheld Xbox, and it was great quality work on that. And right next to it is a tiny Nintendo. I think it was a tiny Nintendo. And it was a full NES right in a handheld. Looked like a Game Boy. That thing was pretty cool. And this PlayStation right here was just flipping awesome, man. That kid did an awesome job building that thing. And here's some ones they have here every year, and they're pretty slick. And they got people there. If you want to stop and talk and ask them any questions, those guys are willing to answer all questions asked at them. And the World Nintendo, this is their third year that they've been at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and I thought, why am I going to go and film this thing? I've seen this stuff. I've got film. If I use it from last year, who's going to notice? Wrong. It was new stuff they had in there. They had some of the same old stuff, but they added a lot of different new stuff in there, and it was so flippin' cool. The guys did a great job organizing this stuff, and I think it's a few collections, and this guy behind the counter is the one that heads it up, and he just does a fantastic job. These kiosks in here this year were different, and man, I really appreciated them. And you can see the line for the NES kiosk there, and the Super Nintendo kiosk was just freaking awesome. People were lined up to look at them and play them and experience playing on a original kiosk. I am so curious to see if they come back next year and what they're going to add for next year for the world of Nintendo. And holy buckets, this is a long video. If you're still here, hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow this channel. I'm just a little bit above 257, I think, at the time of filming this. And I'd like to get some more subscribers and get my channel out there a little bit more. I am having such a blast filming this stuff for you guys and reliving the Midwest Gaming Classic by editing a video. I hope you guys are enjoying it, and if you do, please hit like down below. And as you enter the game center, the first, in the game center side where the museum's at, the first few rows and tables, I'm just rows and rows of tables, is the homebrews. And these are the people that are doing indie games on their own, whether through a small company or just a family getting together to make a video game. They might not be the most graphically intense games, but I'm telling you, gameplay is where it matters, and these people are hobbyists and love gameplay. These are the guys that I think really have the platform for digital downloads, because it's going to help them fund and get money to make their physical games, like this Dynamite. I've seen this here for the past several years at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and it's always busy. I never can get on there to play it, and this year they had a sofa set up to let families sit down and enjoy, the game that they made. And Family Days is Sunday at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and it is flippin' busy. I'm telling you, there is kids everywhere, but I don't mind it. It's one of my favorite days because these kids are enjoying games. They're enjoying the games that I grew up enjoying. They're playing with their moms, dads, grandparents, with brothers, sisters, other kids. It's just neat seeing everybody enjoy gaming so much. Here was something new that they had. It was the miniature room. It was like a mini arcade set up with these quarter arcades, and they're quarter size arcade machines. And they had it set up in this little room, and it was flipping cool. And not only arcade machines that they had, but they had like the token machines, a Pepsi machine. I think there was a 7-Up, a Coke machine in there. And these were all quarter size working arcades playing the ROMs, and they were flipping cool. And the older I get, I don't want to play on something this small, but I can see one just for, looks in the gaming room. Your favorite game came out, like maybe you wanted a Galaga one, that would be pretty slick in the gaming room. Now, this young lady, her dad built this arcade machine and programmed the video game that's on it, and they had a full-out keyboard, and it was just beautiful looking. There's a guy right there. He did an awesome job. That thing was so slick. Yeah, if he's there next year, I'm going to have to stop and talk to him a little bit more and see what he put into that and how many hours he put into making it. But the artwork on everything and just the craftsmanship was just wonderful. Yeah, and as you spin around here and you start getting into the game museum side of it, you have anything from your Apple computers to your Commodore early computers to any console that you could really imagine. If you don't have a CRT at home and you want to play light gun games, this is where you want to do it. They have an area that's just set up for light gun games, and there's some guy shredding on a guitar there. And right there in the middle is a Microvision, and that was really the first handheld game they ever had by Milton Bradley. And my brother actually had that growing up, and I played pretty much a breakout game on that constantly. And the game museum offers so many games that you can actually sit down and experience, and for a lot of these young gamers, these things go back 43, 45 years, and it is just neat to experience how we grew up on gaming with the younger generation, and there's no better place to do this. And the people that put this on and set up all these displays, there is just way too much work involved into it. And I hope that if you were there this year, that you really got to stop, spend some time here and soak it in and enjoy it. It was just purely, walking back in time and experiencing all these game systems firsthand. And back on the wall in that glass cabinet was the complete collection of the Nintendo Virtual Boy. And here is the Virtual Boy kiosk, and you could actually sit there and play the thing and give yourself a headache. And I can remember going to, Toys R Us a kid to jump on that thing. And that's one of my holy grails, to get a working one, so that every once in a while, if I just want to pull up and play the first Virtual Boy, the first real VR game, by Nintendo, and give myself a headache, I can do that whenever I want. But it wasn't this year. I didn't get it at the Midwest Gaming Classic. I still got 3 more conventions. Maybe I'll get that headache producing device someday. And, being in my 50s, I experienced a lot of these game systems firsthand. There's some of the games that, systems that I never got to play, but I can remember when my family purchased Atari 2600, back in the late 70s, and getting our cartridges. I can remember running up to Sears and playing the kiosk, there. And there was always a line of kids waiting to play some Atari 2600 games, and that was cutting edge back then. What did you grow up on? Comment down below on what your favorite one or what your first system was. And I think those first 3 games that we got for the Atari was Combat, Outlaw, and Air Sea Battle. I think that's what the first ones that we played, and we sat in the living room on the floor, right in front of the TV, playing for hours and hours and hours. And on the left hand side there was the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64, and those were the first 2 home computers that I actually had in my household growing up. And you would actually go to the newsstand, pick up magazines, and in the back of the magazines, they would have programs for you to type in on your computer and then save to a cassette tape or a floppy drive, and you'd have to load and play those games or run those programs later. And, you could buy them on floppies or cassettes or even cartridges that would go in the back of those systems. But, money back then was pretty expensive to get these games. And, it was just cheaper to pick up a magazine or to have a friend type one, and you record his cassette and copy it, and then you take it and you have that game yourself. It was just a different way back then for us to get games. And most school systems had Apple IIs in them, and if you did really well or you got, some free time for a study hall, you would actually get to go to the computer lab in the library and check out some time on the Apple II or the Apple IIe and play yourself a little Oregon Trail. Now, here's that area where I was telling you that they had the light gun games, and they just had, this 2-screen setup here is actually Time Crisis, and you got younger kids playing Time Crisis here in 2025, and it was just flipping awesome. Now you got some people playing on some fighting games on, modern day consoles with the fighting sticks there, and they look freaking awesome. And as always, there is always a Smash Brothers tournament going on one of the end caps in the gaming museum, and there is always a line to play. Now you can see you can play all these games, but they will be in like little cages so that no one's walking off with any of the games or the equipment. And some of them are pretty old, and you really don't want to have people pounding on them all day long. And it's just a great way to display these games and a great way to keep them safe and still let everybody play all these old gaming consoles. And on top of these cages, they do have little display cards that will tell you what year these game systems were out and, a little information about it. So you can actually spend a lot of time back in the museum just reading and learning and looking up the information for these consoles that you've never seen before. And I took a friend with me, and I was showing him the Apple Pippin, by Bandai, and he never even knew of that console ever. And I asked him what the game was, playing on the screen, and he said he didn't know it, but it looked familiar. And I said, well, it's called Marathon. He goes, no, I've never played it. And then I was telling him that it was actually by Bungie, and it was actually a predecessor to Halo. And you could see some of the art direction that they had, with the buildings and the ships and stuff, that, it was definitely, pre-Halo days. And when I go there to the Midwest Gaming Classic, I love to spend time in the gaming museum. It is so flippin' cool to see all these systems. And you can see on Family Day that these kids are really enjoying the systems, old and new. And the line to play Portal by Multimorphic was so flippin' long. I mean, you really want to get there Friday night to get to try some of these games when the lines are a lot smaller. This game was just fun. It had like a video screen for the play field that interacted with the ball, and it was a new concept, and it was pretty cool. And Atari was a present at this year's convention in the Game Center, and it was pretty cool to have them there. They actually sponsored the event, and they set up, a lot of product, for purchase, a lot of apparel they had there that you could only buy online. And it was kind of neat to see them there at the Midwest Gaming Classic. They actually had an area where they set up most of their, Atari 2600 pluses. They had some of their homebrew games. They even had the, coffee that they've been peddling on their site there, and they were giving it away for free. So if you wanted to take one of your Keurig cups home and try their coffee, you could do that right then and there. They were pretty happy to be there, and I was happy to see them there. They had a great display from Atari Age, and they were featuring the new iRobot that hasn't even been released yet. So they had a really neat presence, this year at the Game Center for the Midwest Gaming Classic. And I spent some money at this Atari booth, because it was just neat to see them there. I bought a couple t-shirts, and I got some games from them to take home, and a wireless controller for the 2600 Plus. And pinball is huge at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and I spent a lot of time Friday night playing some of the newer games, and They were awesome. And I got to play the Evil Dead. It's a new one by Spooky Pinball, and that was a sweet game. And kind of lucky because my hometown pinball arcade came home with this sucker, so I can play this whenever. And it is a sweet looking game. So a shout out to Main Street Pinball in Austin, Minnesota. If you ever get down this way, stop in and see them. It is $10 on Fridays and Saturdays to play. They're open Friday 4 to 10. Saturday they are open 12 to 10. Stop down and say hi to the guys. They also have a video game store up front, so if you're looking to buy some used games, check out what they got. Sometimes they get some new stuff in, and they've got some bangers in there. And if you live in southern Minnesota and you can get over there to see them, I know they've got some specials going on where they've got some packs, like bundles of games bundled together for $25. It's Cody's Crazy Bundle Sale. Stop in and pick up a bundle of games for $25. And they have Tilt Amusement and Kingpin do a heck of a display of new and used games there for purchase, and it is just awesome. They brought out some great games, some great video games. There was this new one called Perfect Pour, and it was kind of a variation of Tapper, and people were loving to play that game. And they also had one, I think it was Soccer Ninja, or no, Kickball. There it is, Kung Fu Kickball. And that looked like it was a blast. And there was always somebody on there playing it, but you can play just about anything at the Midwest Gaming Classic, whether it be classic arcade games or newer pinball games. They have them set to free to play, and it's all part of your entrance fee when you just, you come in. It's part of the gaming experience. And they had the new Stern Dungeons and Dragons, and they had a lot of them there that you could try it out. And I wish I could say I picked one up to bring home, but I didn't. What I did is I picked up that sign on top to bring home with me this time. Sure would have been fun to pick up a nice new pinball table, but $10,000 plus, I was not in my Midwest Gaming Classic budget this year. Maybe in the future, but not this year. Dungeons and Dragons was a fun game, but I gotta say Evil Dead was just a blast, man. I love playing that one. I was hoping to spend a little more time on the Uncanny X-Men, but that one always had a line as well, and I guess I'm just going to have to go up to Bad Penny Pinball in St. Paul, Minnesota to drop some quarters in that sucker and get my time in on the Uncanny X-Men up there. Now, the young lady that was at the beginning of the video fell in love with this machine right here. It was the Jurassic Park limited edition game, and it was sweet, man. We ended up playing this probably the most out of any of the pinball tables there. This one was just fun. And I can remember my first year going to the Midwest Gaming Classic, and they actually had that Mandalorian pinball was out that year, and I think Godzilla was the big one that year. And I had little to no interest in pinball at all till I saw that Mandalorian, and I ventured over to play it, and then I ventured over to play Godzilla, and it just started a new addiction to gaming. I love modern pinball, and I love playing some of the older ones, and you can play both at the Midwest Gaming Classic. They have this new sales floor, and you can go back to another area where they have tons of older pinball machines set up, and you can purchase those as well to take home. I'm just curious, how many of you have pinball machines at home? I don't have one at the moment, but I can see in my future, I can see getting a pinball machine. They're pretty spendy. What's your favorite pinball machine? What was your favorite pinball machine growing up? I can remember playing Evel Knievel all the time growing up. I thought that one was just fun. And now we're going through a homebrew section here, and these are actually pinball machines that people made. And my camera did not capture this topper on the cup head, and had one of those fans that spinned, and it produced an image, like a digital image above, and it looked sweet in real life. And just because of frame rate, it didn't really transition to the camera of what your eye caught. And that topper was just really cool. And all these homebrew games were just really neat. And every year somebody comes up with some new idea, and I love to look at them, and this section's growing every year. And there was the actual monster truck back in the game center, and you could actually climb up there, get into it, and look at the control panels, and they're pretty nice. They're pretty friendly, showing you what a monster truck does and what it looks like really in the inside of them. It's not like your typical truck. And back in the game center, they had some arcade games all set up and a lot of competition games that you could play and a lot of musical games, just like they do every other year. And some of these were for purchase, and some of them were just collectors that were sharing and letting you experience some of the games. And some of these rhythm games, they have stuff like that at the Starcade in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they're pretty fun games to play. You got to get out of your comfort zone and try some of them. And one of the nights I came down here, and this Dance Dance Revolution, was a Disney version of it. Man, there was an older guy, and let's just say he wasn't as fit as an American Gladiator, but man, that guy was ripping on that thing. I couldn't believe the moves and the scores he was getting at Disney Dance Dance Revolution. And in this corner, we had a House of the Dead 2, and that little girl was killing some zombies. And this was a 4-player game. I played something similar to this at the Galloping Ghost in Chicago, and it was actually a Darius DX. I think this was just a Darius game, but it was a 4-person sit down, and it had that ultra wide screen and was just flipping cool. Now, they set up these arcade games, and they're for sale, and some of them really work the whole time, but you got to remember, these things are, 40, 50 years old, some of them, and they're going to go down, man. They are going to go down, and a lot of them working today, but on, the first night, I saw a lot of them were needing some TLC from people, and they were coming over and trying to keep them working, as long as they could. But these games were available to play for free, and you could put a bid on them in an auction, or you can outright purchase them. And they had numbers of the people that were there attending that you could call them and tell them you're interested and meet up and, haggle out a price and maybe agree to taking that sucker home with you. And the less that I buy in the vending room floor, it makes me wonder, maybe someday I'm going to be driving the truck back up here to Milwaukee and taking one of these arcade cabinets home with me to put in the gaming room. If you could buy one arcade cabinet for your gaming room, besides a multi-cab, if you just wanted an original game that you loved growing up, what would be that one game that you would buy to put in the gaming room? Yeah, just comment down below and let me know what that game would be. And one of my comments from the Galloping Ghost was on that Dungeons and Dragons game. So obviously that person would be putting that in their basement. And here are some of the classic pinballs they had. There's some modern ones mixed in here, but you can see these things were for sale too. So if you wanted to pick one up and buy it, you could actually do that and take it home with you. There were some great games back here, and they were all set to free play. And people were sharing them, even though they were putting them up for sale. They were letting people play these games. And all the people that put in the hard work of transporting these things and getting them there, thank you very much, man. I really, really appreciate it. And what makes a Midwest Gaming Classic the premier, gaming convention in the Midwest is the gaming community. It is just a fun time, man. They're going to see some different people there. There's going to be people running around with tails, and it might be out of your environment that you're used to seeing, but I guarantee everybody is just there to have a good time. And that Williams Space Shuttle actually made its way back to Main Street Pinball with the Evil Dead, and that is a classic game, and it was really fun to play on. And this is about noon on Family Day, so that it's going to get a little busier. And this is the reality of, Sundays at the Midwest Gaming Classic. You're going to get crowds of people gathered around games, waiting their turn to play. But you can see there's games available to play here and there that you can just jump on and play. Whether you buy a VIG pass or you buy a day pass or a 2-day pass, you're going to have a great time. There is something for everybody at the Midwest Gaming Classic. I really enjoy this. This has been a good tradition for me. And my core group of friends that are going to this thing keeps on growing. Every year, somebody wants to go to the Midwest Gaming Classic with me, and I don't mind it at all. It's just kind of it's the happening event in the Midwest, and it's one of the best, video game conventions that I've been to. I'm going to go to 2 more that I haven't been to this year, but this one is just fun, fun for me because it's actually, just a time of playing games and laughing and having a good time. And this time we didn't get really out to any other areas beside the convention hall itself and the 3rd Street Market. But I just want to challenge you, take an extra day or 2 and stay in Milwaukee. There is a lot of stuff to do, and there is some awesome restaurants really close by in the downtown area, and you guys won't regret it. It is just fun. And in fact, I'm going back for a family event in May. Visit Up Downs, maybe head up to Menominee Falls and visit the Garcade. But in May, I'm going to meet halfway up there and enjoy Milwaukee itself. So if you got time and you want to enjoy, a day or 2 at the Midwest Gaming Classic and then spend the rest of the time just checking out Milwaukee, it is one fun place to visit. And if you haven't seen Lake Michigan, I would suggest that you head over and check it out. If you want to do a quick walk, you can head over to Veterans Park. They've got some museums down around that area, but you can also head to Veterans Park and buy a kite. They have a kite pavilion where you can go in and buy a kite and actually fly a kite right there in front of Lake Michigan. And I got to thank you once again for watching this video. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, man, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the footage of the Midwest Gaming Classic. I really have fun going to this event every year. If you like what you see, please hit the like button, or if you haven't yet, please subscribe. I do video game content. My name's Andy, and I consider myself a 60-minute gamer because I work a lot of hours at my job, and I can only play games an hour here and an hour there. I really don't have time to sit there and play a lot of games, on my video game consoles that I have in my game room. But what I do like to play, I like to share with you guys and do a quick video online and talk about if I thought it was a good video game or if it was a bad video game. So if you enjoy this, please subscribe, and I hope to see you back watching another video soon. In the upcoming summer and fall here, I'm going to be doing 3 more conventions. I'm actually going to be doing Mo Game Con down in St. Louis, Missouri again this year. I had fun doing that. It was more of a vendor hall than it was, like a game center or like what you're seeing here with the Midwest Gaming Classic. But what it had in common, there was a lot of people that were just into that gaming community where people were really enjoying themselves. It was good company. I had a good time talking with a lot of people down there, and I can't wait to get back and see what their vendor hall offers a little different than what this one did. Because sometimes regions matter in gaming, what people are playing, what people are interested in, and what they're reselling. So I'll be hitting that one up. And then in Minneapolis in August, I'll be hitting 2D Con up for the first time. And I've been recommended by several viewers to hit that up. And I can't wait to get up and see what that's about, because that's really close to home. And then in October, I don't think they've announced dates yet, but as soon as they do, I'll solidify if I can go. But I would really like to go to the second Retrofest, and that is Retro Rick's, game convention that he holds down there in Conway, Arkansas. So that will be on the docket for this year, and hopefully I'll be picking up a Switch 2 and getting some content out to you on that. And I'm just excited to see what Nintendo's bringing to the gaming front once again. And the completion of this video and doing this edit completes the Midwest Gaming Classic 2025 for me. It was such a blast, and I will be going next year. If you see me, stop and say hi. Game on, peeps.